Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Mama Jack podcast. Today, our guest is Angie. I'm going to read you her bio real quick so you have a little rundown on what we're going to talk about today. Angie is an adoptive and bio mom, former foster mom, adoption coach, speech therapist, and has worked in the autism field for 2+ decades. She knows firsthand that raising children who are difficult to connect with and who often display challenging behaviors takes a huge toll on parents. This can often lead to shame, anxiety, depression, isolation, and a growing loss of hope. This doesn't have to be the story. She coaches adoptive parents through worry, frustration, and resentment to create hope and joy through lasting connections. Angie's story is very touching. All of my coaches have been this way. You learn from your life experiences and you share with others, and she is a perfect example of that. So without any further delay, this is Angie and I's interview.
Hi, Angie. How are you today?
I'm great. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. So let's hear a little bit about your story and what you do.
Yeah, so my name is Angie and I am an adoption coach. So a little bit of the backstory about kind of the path that led me here. So I have for the past couple of decades, I've worked in the autism field. So I started working out in ABA, and then after doing that for about 10 years, I decided to go back and get my degree as a speech pathologist. I was really fascinated by the unique speech patterns of many of the kiddos that I had worked with. And so I got my degree as a speech pathologist, and then once I graduated, I ended up going right back into autism because it really was I had a biological daughter. I love her very much. She was about 10 at the time. And I didn't have this strong desire to have more kids of my own, but I knew that there were so many other kids out there who, needed a family, needed people to love them and take care of them, maybe while they were waiting for their parents to work on whatever their goals were. So I ended up becoming a licensed foster parent. And with the plan of not adopting, actually, my plan was to just help kids, wait for their parents, and support their parents while they were working through whatever they had to. But in the process of being a foster mom, ended up adopting my son. That's kind of, I think, how it goes for so many families.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah. So I went into adoption and fostering feeling more prepared than probably a lot of parents do, right? Like I had worked in the autism field at that point for, I don't know, 13 or 14 years at that point, and, had dealt with, I felt like every kind of challenging behavior and really felt confident in my skills to handle behaviors, to be really, I don't know, present and neutral at the same time. But in having my own child be the one who I was having a hard time with managing behaviors, the tools that I had learned, all the training that I had gone to learn about trauma and attachment, it it wasn't enough and it wasn't working. And so I was like doing all the right things. At first I was trying to use the ABA strategies I had used in my career. But that was not what my son needed at all, at least not the way that I was implementing them.
Hmm.
So then, I dove in headfirst to every kind of training I could find out about trauma and about behaviors and about how to be the best mom that I could be. And our relationship just kept getting harder and harder. Behaviors kept getting worse. My connection with him kept just becoming more friction. It was so hard. And so as I'm like expending all of my energy, all of my time, and help him and manage behaviors and work with the school and work with services, it also had an impact on my marriage, on my relationship with my bio daughter, because I was giving him everything I had, and didn't really have much left. And
Yeah.
it wasn't helping him either. So I kept this feeling like I'm missing something, but I'm asking all the experts, every question I could imagine. But I just kept feeling like I'm missing something, or like I can't possibly be the only adoptive mom who's having such a hard time. And so but I didn't know what to do with all of those thoughts about I'm missing something or I can't be alone. And so I honestly just kind of struggled through it. And so my son is 17 now. We don't have a relationship yet again. But what also happened a couple of years ago is about a year and a half, well, it's probably almost 2 years ago now, I kind of fell into coaching for myself, for not for relationship reasons. It was actually for monetary reasons. I'm trying to like do better with my business. And pretty much as soon as I got into coaching, I realized that that's what I was missing the whole time that I was parenting him. I I felt victim. I felt when I was raising him like what I was experiencing in my home was happening to me, and which that's what I was thinking, right? Like, I have this child with these extreme behaviors, and I'm just stuck and almost like waiting for, I don't know, waiting for the worst or waiting for graduation or, like waiting for something outside of me to change. And I didn't really realize that I was, it was the way that I was thinking and showing up for him that was the part that actually needed to change.
Yeah.
So, so I pretty quickly in working with a coach realized that, holy cow, like I take full responsibility for my relationships with everybody, with my daughter, with, now with the guy in my life, and of course with my son. And so I right away have started doing the work, the real work, to work on my mindset, which helps me show up in such a different way, helps me feel such a different way about my relationship with everybody. But again, my son, most importantly. And so I also then quickly realized that if this was the missing piece for me, it's also the missing piece for so many other adoptive parents out there that went into this with this goal of like, I just want to help a child who needs me so much. But quickly, our goals shift so quickly to thinking like, oh my gosh, now I need to manage all of these behaviors.
Yeah.
But that really wasn't our goal in the first place. So now like I said, I'm an adoption coach, and my biggest goal is to help adoptive parents who feel like they're frustrated or overwhelmed or even like at the end of their rope, feeling resentful, feeling hopeless. My mission is to help those adoptive parents to regain that hope and to see that they get to create the joy in their family and that they're not victim to their child's behaviors and that they really are the key to happiness in their family. So yeah,
That's amazing. How
yeah.
old was your son when you adopted him?
When we adopted him, he was 5,
Hmm.
and at that point had experienced way more life than any human should, let alone a 5-year-old.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
When you talk about ABA therapy, can you explain that to people that don't know what that is?
Yeah. So ABA is a science that is used to change behavior, essentially. And so in the science of ABA, it looks at what happens before a behavior, what the behavior looks like, and then what happens after a behavior. And most often, we can control the before or the after to influence that behavior in the middle. And so sometimes it means like using rewards, or sometimes it means using consequences. Sometimes it means setting up the situation in a different way to impact a behavior. And ABA looks at behaviors as really like all actions. So good, bad, or otherwise. So like the behavior of taking a drink out of, I have a cup in front of me. So the antecedent or the before the behavior is that I'm thirsty. So, my behavior is that I take a drink, and the result is that I'm not so thirsty afterwards. But the same can be said for, a screaming behavior or laughing behavior, right? Every behavior really has something that happens before and after it. So ABA is the science of really looking at those behaviors, making them objective, and then influencing what happens before after. So, so it's used most often, or it's used very frequently in teaching children with autism skills to teaching skills to help them learn what they need to do to maybe catch up with their peers, but also can be used to help minimize maybe some more problematic behaviors. So I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, no, it definitely does. So your daughter was, you said she was 10 years old at the time that you adopted him?
Yeah. So there's about a 5-year age difference between the two of them. And
And
so for 10 years, she was an only child. And then she didn't get that, I mean, lots of parents have 10-year-olds and then have a baby, and your child gets that time to plan and prepare and then have a tiny baby who's, cute and innocent for a while. But when you all of a sudden have a 5-year-old that came to us with all kinds of baggage,
yeah,
you know, that's quite a challenge for a 10-year-old girl.
yeah. What made you choose him to adopt him?
Oh, that's a beautiful question. So I was married at the time, and we were fostering a set of siblings. They were, I want to say, like 11 and 13-ish, somewhere around there. And so we were fostering these two boys. And like I said, the plan was not to adopt. But one of my friends happened to work for an adoption agency. I didn't even know that she was working there. I think it was a newer job for her, but she happened to be working there. She knew that we were licensed foster parents, and my son's bio mom went to her agency. She had worked with my son's bio mom had worked with his agency previously for other of her children. And so she had decided to continue to parent my son until he was about 5, and she decided that she couldn't do it anymore. She was really struggling. And so she went to this agency, but they don't they specialize in adopting out infants, basically. So the families that they work with are all licensed just up through the age of 2. And this mom came here who they had worked with before with her 5-year-old. And so they didn't have any families that were kind of on their list to reach out to. So my friend, who was working as an admin assistant at the time, reached out kind of on a whim and said, hey, I know that you foster, and there's this little guy and he needs a family. Um, would you guys consider? And so, we had a brief discussion at home about whether or not we would consider. And I just, I kept saying, like, do I have a reason to say no? And I didn't. We have a nice home and lots of love. And so we went and met him with his bio mom, and he just the sweetest little guy. He was so excited to meet us, and big hugs. I now know, the day that I met him, right? His bio mom had said, this couple is going to come meet you, and they're going to take you out for lunch, and it's going to be so much fun, and you might go stay with them. She said she was pretty vague about it. So we meet him, and he like gives us this big hug, and he tells us how excited he is. And me just being, I don't know, my rosy colored glasses on, I was like, oh my goodness, this is the sweetest boy ever. But
Yeah.
now I know what I know, and I look back and I'm like, oh my gosh, like that is a child with significant attachment difficulties.
Mm-hmm.
That isn't an expected behavior for a 5-year-old to be so excited to meet their new family, right? But yeah, he just so sweet and so bright and so engaging. And we knew that we could love him, but we couldn't have possibly imagined how really challenging the attachment piece and the trauma piece were when, on the one hand, we have this little boy that we're, falling in love with, but his brain is telling him, push these people away. You can't trust them. They're going to hurt you. They're going to, leave you. Bad things will happen. And so those are the behaviors that we saw come out of him, was all of this, his survival brain was telling him, do things to push them away. They're going to hurt you, so just push them away. And oh man, it was challenging.
Yeah, I could imagine. I mean, not to mention, does his bio mom, do they have any communication at all, or was it completely cut off once you guys adopted him?
She decided she needed to cut it off pretty quickly. She helped with the transition, which was so appreciated. And I think, helped him tremendously. But after about 2 months, she said, I can't do this anymore. It's just so hard for me. I need to say goodbye. And so he hasn't heard from her since probably 2 months after he joined our family.
Oh my
It,
goodness.
yeah. And he stayed connected with her parents, so his grandparents, for a while. But we as his new parents made a really, really hard decision to limit those visits for quite some time because he couldn't connect with us, or at least that's what we thought, because it was like the monthly visits with them were like Christmas to him. Like he was like counting down the days. It was as if he was like not even here with us.
Yeah.
And he was just so excited about his visit with them. And so building a connection was just, it felt impossible. And so we made a really hard decision to say we need to hold off on those visits for a while and really work on connecting. And I still don't know if that was the right decision or not, but he's older now, and he has the tools to reach out in whatever way he wants to really anybody with today's technology.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was really hard. They still send him, they would still send him cards and gifts and things like that, but yeah.
And what did your daughter have to say about all this? Because I know that was I mean, it's one thing to have a baby come in, like you said. It's another thing to have, a 5-year-old come in. And at 10 years old, she was in a pretty vulnerable spot herself growing, right? So
Yeah.
this is just like, has she talked to you about these feelings that she's had over the years, or how did that look for you?
I mean, I can't possibly imagine, I talk with her, and I just I can't possibly imagine what went through her head the whole time, like going from being an only child for so many years to then, her not only trying to process what happened for herself, but then also to see, like, her and I have such a close bond. And I know that despite my best mom efforts to keep my feelings private. Finding that balance as mom is always hard, to know, like, you want your kids to see you're human, but you don't want them to feel worried or anything like that, right? And so, but I do know, because I don't know, I guess, but I imagine, because she's so close to me, that she definitely sensed how hard it was how hard it was for me to parent her brother, and that I think that caused her stress, because how can it not? She cares so much about me, and then would see how stressed I was. And so I can only imagine how hard all of that was for her in the developmental age of, 10 through, well, she's 21 now, but, just the stages that her brain was at through all of that, and how she kind of processed all of that, I can imagine was just so incredibly hard.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a
Yeah.
lot to take on, and a lot for you to take on. And I mean, a beautiful thing to do, honestly. And people don't think of the trouble that it might cause. No, I don't want to say trouble, but they don't think of the hardships that come with it, you
Yeah.
know? And it's even, I feel like even when you adopt a baby at birth, I mean, you still
Yeah.
don't really know, right?
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
husband was adopted. I don't know if I told you that whenever I
Yeah.
first talked to you.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, with 23andMe, he was able to find like cousins and stuff like that from his mother's side. And it's just crazy. Like, he didn't want to pry and like, or anything like that. He respected, his mom, wanted it the way she wanted it. And that, well, his birth mother wanted it
Yeah.
the way she wanted it. And the cousin, like, we talked to her and everything, but it's just so interesting because you just never know, because a lot
Yeah.
of stuff is taught, right? But a lot of
Yeah.
stuff is also genetic.
Yeah.
And a lot of times you don't know what you're getting yourself into, especially with a 5-year-old, because they've already been through so much,
Yeah.
and some of those wounds that they have are hard to heal. And then there's this new person there. And I don't know if he probably felt abandoned by his like mother. I don't mean to put harsh words out there, but just to be honest, like,
It's true though.
he probably felt very abandoned, and then takes it out on you and your family, because basically at that age feels like you stole him away from his mother, probably, I would
Yeah.
imagine.
Yeah. And you think about it for any kiddo in his situation, right? Like they can't take it out on the one that maybe they might really be mad at. And that's what a lot of the professionals would tell me is like, of course he's going to take it out on you the most because you're the mom. I may not be the mom who decided to find him a new home, but I am the mom,
Yeah.
And so, yeah, when there's so much research now that shows too that even babies who are adopted right at the hospital, who maybe never, oftentimes babies will have their first snuggle with the adoptive family. And so, I mean, man, I've heard so many families now say, but my child can't have attachment difficulties because I've been with them since day one. But we can't discredit those first 9 months and whatever did or did not happen during that time. There's just so much research now to show that even the hormones that the biomom is releasing while the baby's in utero impact brain development and thoughts, and feelings. It creates that child the way that they are because of what they experience the entire time, not just from the moment they're born. They're humans the whole time.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of wild, but
S-
yeah,
So did you
yeah,
guys ever do like family counseling to try to work it out? What were your steps in working through all of this stuff? Because you said you're
yeah,
still not the closest, but it's better.
yeah, man. I really did everything that and then some. And so, man, if I went through the whole list of that I sought out. But as soon as we adopted him, I asked around. I work at a behavioral health clinic, which is a huge advantage because they know what needs to be done and know the best recommendations. So I had two resources. But so right away, as soon as we adopted him, we're going to get him into therapy because his that he knew it. Whatever happened before in his first 5 years, we can't change that, but we know that we've completely flipped his world upside down. We know that he's experienced really challenging things because you can't possibly be in a situation where all of a sudden you need a whole new family and have that first 5 years be swimming well, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so right, we got him into therapy. The first therapist was not a good match at all. She didn't understand trauma and would kind of tell us like he seems like a perfectly well-adjusted little boy. But she
Yeah.
barely knew him. And again, like you can't experience that in your life and have it just be. He was really good at masking at first. And I've even since learned that we all know about the trauma responses, the fight, flight, or freeze. I mean, I think everybody kind of knows about that, but quite a bit recently about a fourth trauma response called fawning. And fawning is a trauma response that often can occur when a child has experienced complex trauma. And complex trauma means something happens kind of repeatedly and oftentimes with a trusted caregiver. So which ends up being like abuse or neglect at home, as opposed to like a trauma, like, you were in a car accident or you were in a national, a disaster, right? Complex trauma happens over and over and usually with somebody you trust, which is what makes it so complex, right? But the fawning response is a trauma response that often can happen when an individual has experienced complex trauma. And what fawning looks like is almost like the complete opposite of what you might expect for a behavior, right? Fawning looks like being overly affectionate, overly complimentary, overly attentive, and sweet. And so this is something that we saw in our son with other people, not at home.
Yeah.
But as a mom, man, it would like drive me crazy because the behaviors at home were like, I mean, the stuff you read a book about. And then he would go hang out with other people and they're like, I don't understand, he is the sweetest, politest, most well-behaved boy I've ever met. And it was about half of the time when he was not at home we would hear that. And now I understand it's that fawning response. But anyway, so yeah, so he worked with several different therapists. For the longest period of time, he worked with a therapist who really specialized in trauma and attachment, psychiatry. We attended therapy appointments together as a family. But in the midst of all of this, raising him precipitated my husband and I getting a divorce, which ended up just adding a lot to my son's, kind of view of life and everything that he had to process, as well as, he had only been in our family for about a year and a half, and then we decided that divorcing was what we needed to do, which, man, that just made everything 10 times harder.
Yeah, I bet.
But yeah, so we did the family therapy thing for a while. Sometimes, before divorce, after divorce, we'd all be there together in therapy. Sometimes one parent would go, sometimes the other. And we got him involved in really every level of treatment and therapy that I knew how. I now know that I was trying so hard to fix him, but not really knowing that I needed to work on my own mindset to show up differently for him. I know that now. I didn't then. Then I was like, I'm doing everything I know how to do to help him. I'm getting him involved in every possible level of help I can. But now I know more than any therapy or treatment program or medication, he really needed me to keep my head in the game and just continue to show up loving him no matter what, just unconditionally loving him, not changing how I showed up for him based on how his behaviors were. So I think that, to me, like, I could go through the list of all of the things I got him involved in, but that wasn't what he needed.
Yeah, right. Well, I feel like also a lot of times therapy when it comes to a child is a parent's tool.
Yeah.
And it is like kind of getting to the root so they understand how they can better parent.
Yeah.
And, God, that just sounds so hard. And your daughter, I'm sure, has gone through it too. How's their relationship now?
I, I don't really talk much now. And I don't know if that will change much, but he, like I said, he's 17 right now. And it's just such any 17-year-old to be working on a very egocentric age, very self-absorbed for most of us at 17, quite honestly. So,
Yeah.
I think some will help. Yeah. It's a tricky.
What now? And you say like there was a lot of trouble. Was every day bad, or was it just sometimes this would ring out and, all crap would hit the fan?
I would say that it progressed to every day being rough.
Yeah.
And in the beginning, I don't know. I really feel like we went through a honeymoon phase maybe for the first couple of months, and then it pretty quickly got hard, a couple months into having him in our family, and just these like off the wall behaviors that we were like, where did that come from? And what in the heck do we do about this? Challenge things that, you know, like I said, in all the time and working in the autism field, things I had never experienced. And not only the behaviors themselves were things I never experienced, but the feeling of feeling out of control, feeling like I have no idea what to do about this, even though professionally I had so many tools in my tool belt. I think that that was the hardest part for me. And I think that that also inevitably is what led to me feeling hopeless and feeling, and honestly, I hate this word so much, but I definitely started to feel resent and regret, which is nothing that we want to feel about our kids. But that's the point that I got to. And I felt like I felt so justified in feeling that way. Like, of course, I feel regret for making this decision to adopt because this is so hard.
Hmm.
But now I know that I didn't have to feel that regret. And really, what I needed was help to work on my mindset, because I really, and I can't emphasize this enough, but I now know work 100% impacts the action that we take. And so if I was feeling regret or feeling resent because I was thinking like it should have been easier, or oh my gosh, I can't even tell you how many times people would say to me, and then it just kind of sinks in, but people would say like, shouldn't he be more adjusted by now to your family? Shouldn't he be done being mad at his bio family? Shouldn't he this, and this, right? I can't even tell you how many times I heard people say that shouldn't it be better by now? And, as much as like cognitively, I was like, no, he's experienced trauma. It shouldn't be easier by now. There's so much to work through. Even though I knew that cognitively, just by hearing it over and over again, I now know it was sinking to my subconscious, and I was starting to really believe like, yeah, he should be over this by now. Yeah, this should be easier. Yeah, we shouldn't be dealing with these behaviors by now. I'm doing all the right things. Those are the stories I would tell myself. But because that's what I was thinking, I was starting to believe myself that it should be easier. Behavior should be done by now, blah, 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 right? Because that's what I was thinking, then that's how I was showing up for him. That's how I was responding to him. That's that we had in our relationship, is that, I was thinking better and responding to him in such a way like, we've said this 100 times now, this, you shouldn't be doing X, Y, or Z. And then the result was that our relationship just kept deteriorating. And now knowing what I know about mindset, if I had instead been working on thinking, of course, this is hard for him, and I just want him to know how much I love him and that I am here for him 100%, no matter how many mistakes he makes. If those are the things that I was really, truly thinking and believing, I would have shown up for him so differently. I would have responded to his behavior so differently. I wouldn't have been so desperate to like find the next fix for him, because he wasn't broken. He just needed more love, and he needed to trust that I was going to love him no matter what. And I didn't do a good job of doing that. My words were saying that, but my actions were not.
Well,
So
you stood by his side that whole time, and you never left, and you continued to try to help yourself to help him. So in time, he's going to realize that. It's just, as a young kid, of course, they don't recognize that. So it's like, oh man, like you really were put through the ringer, but I mean, you didn't give up on him, and you're still not giving up on him. And that counts for such a beautiful thing. It's such an amazing thing, because a lot of people would have thrown in the towel. Like, your marriage, you know, ended. Like, that's a lot to handle in itself, you know?
yeah.
Fostering kid. Did you stop fostering kids after you adopted him?
Yeah, we decided that we wanted to give him the best, give him all of us, really. And so yeah, we didn't, once the boys that were in our home went home, or went home, then we didn't renew our foster license.
Yeah. So it's just like, man,
Yeah.
you did a lot of great work. And you know what? I wouldn't, like, I don't know if you think about the past and you regret. You can't regret, because you were doing the best you knew how to do then, and now things are, I mean, every day they come out with new studies about how, you should treat kids, and how this affects them and that affects them. And sometimes we don't have access to that until it's like, wow, this is what I should have done. I have a lot of regrets about the way I treated my son when I had my horrible postpartum depression and anxiety, and I was going through, a mental breakdown, and it was horrible for me. And all these shoulda, coulda, wouldas, well, whatever. I tried my best. And in time, he's going to know that regardless of the, how do I say this? The tools that you had at your hands, you were trying your best the whole time, and you never gave up on him despite all of the things that happened. And you can only do what you can do,
Yeah.
So
Well, and I mean, I'm human, so of course I'm gonna, have a little bit of regret, but I can't be mad at myself for not knowing. Like, I know that I was giving him 180%
yeah.
of what I knew how to do at the time. I have no regrets about not trying hard enough for him, for my relationship with him. I now know that there was a huge missing piece, but I also think, and it makes me sad to think that I learned this because our relationship turned out to not be so. I'm confident that, our relationship will come around, but it's unfortunate, but I feel so strongly that I had the challenges that I had because I now know that I was put on this planet to help other parents to
Yeah.
have the tools that they need to not try to fix their child, but to really work on themselves and their own mindset, because that will impact their relationships, it will trickle down to become who their children become too. I feel so strongly that I had the experience that I had with my son because I had to, so that I could have this realization that adoptive parents need a coach. And I don't think I would have realized that if I had just like known about coaching beforehand and just decided to do it, I wouldn't have had that kind of realization. And I just know there are so many families out there that are feeling like I must have gotten if you look at all the billboards, adoption just looks so beautiful
Yeah.
and it is so beautiful to bring a child into your home. It is such an amazing thing to do for a child, but for most parents, it is way, way harder than they ever anticipated because you can't possibly imagine what it feels like to be in that circumstance. It is so very different than biological parenting. And so I feel so confident that I had that experience with my son because I had to really feel it so that I could help other adoptive parents before it got so hard.
Yes. And how do you feel after all of this? Like, what are your feelings on the whole situation as a whole? Like, how do you feel about the situation right now?
About my son or about coaching?
About all of it, like your son being the reason for coaching, your daughter and what happened with her. What are your feelings on life right now and where you are?
Oh man, I am loving life where I am right now. As I've been working with families through coaching, every time I talk with a family, it just confirms 100% that this is exactly the path that this is my purpose in life. That helping adoptive parents I'm really good at it. They are making crazy, crazy positive changes in their life. They're doing that, but I'm helping to guide them. And it just every time I talk with a family and hear their stories shift from being very similar to what mine was to now being so hopeful and sharing, I had a parent tell me today that she said, just a few weeks ago it was so stressful, and now today she's like, 7 out of 10 days are actually great now with my child. And I'm like, wait, 7 out of 10 already? it just it,
Nice.
it just lights me up to see the changes. So I love it. And I love that what I've learned through coaching and working on mindset, it impacts every aspect of my life. I show up different at work. I show up different for my daughter. I show up different in my relationship with my guy. It's had such a profound impact on who I am and how I see life. And I do not feel like a victim to anything that's happening. I don't know, my transmission went out in my car this week, and old me would have been like, oh my gosh, why did these things happen to me? And now I'm like, oh, cool. I've got some ideas about how I can make a little extra cash so that I can pay for that. Like, no big deal. It
Yeah.
just totally changed the way that I look at life. And so my relationship with my daughter has never been stronger, and I love it, and she's watching me change, and she notices it and she's commented on it. And so I know that's going to have a ripple effect on her as well. So I don't know, I am loving life, and I'm hopeful for my relationship with my son in the future. Our last few interactions have been definitely improved over before. And so, yeah, I don't know. I love life.
Well, that's great to hear. And I love like taking your situation and making it useful and helpful for others, because that's kind of why I started my whole podcast. So I I just love what you're doing, and I think it's so helpful. And I think that, like I was talking about before, even at birth, when you adopt, a lot of people don't realize how hard it actually can be.
Yeah.
And especially, as they get older, me and my husband were just talking about this because we always say, we're done having our own kids, but we always say if we ever felt the urge, we would try to foster or adopt. And this has helped me a lot in knowing, you never know what you're getting into. But I feel like even with any kid, they're never really at fault, right? Because they
Yeah.
only know what their surroundings were and they're built from that.
Yeah.
So it's such a hard predicament to be in when a kid is acting out or being difficult, because your mind says get frustrated with them, but how can you? Because this is all they know.
Yeah.
So, and after years and years, you have a lot of patience, and I really applaud you for that. Not saying that, like, if I was in this situation, I would have given up, but like, you've really taken your situation and made it into such a beautiful thing. And again, as your son gets older, I think he's going to see that and he's going to realize, oh crap, look at all these things she did for me. Like, what an awesome parent. If he doesn't already say that already, I'm sure he thinks it, but his teenage mind is like, I can't, I'm too macho for that, you
Oh
know?
yeah, probably. Too funny.
Is there anything else that you wanted to share?
No, well, one other quick thing, I guess. So I do, so obviously I work with families. So if you or someone you know is an adoptive family, and you need that, if you've tried other things and nothing's working, I know why, and I would love to help you out. But I do also, so I have a group on Facebook. It's called Connected Parents with Angie, and it's a private group. So I try to keep people in there who are, we're all in the same boat, right? I don't want people in there just to like watch, right?
Yeah.
So, but every week I do a training specific to the parents that I'm serving in there. So really valuable stuff. So I highly recommend that you check it out. So it's Connected Parents with Angie. And then if you want to set up I do offer a free session. Jackie, I'll give you the link so that people can link or click that link. It's complicated to say it on the podcast, but I
Yeah.
also have it in my info section in my Connected Parents with Angie group. So just another great way to connect, and really in that free session I give you tools to start building connections right away. I feel so strongly about helping parents do better and showing up differently and not get out of that frustration and resent and all that yuck, man. Like nobody wants to be there, nobody should be there, nobody needs to be there. So yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I feel like even parents, with bio kids could use that help sometimes.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, you don't have to be an
It's
adoptive parent to be in my group or to book a free session by any means. My mission is to help adoptive parents, but I know that this stuff works great for all parents. So yeah, check it out.
awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I love the work that you're doing here to just help parents not feel so alone.
Yeah. That's the whole purpose. We have all felt alone at a certain time, right? I feel like that's why most coaches end up becoming coaches. A lot of people that run the mental health podcasts. I've been a part of three or four, five of them already with my stuff. And, it all stems from something we felt. And you have a passion for this because you felt alone in it. And I have a passion for what I do because I once felt alone in my situation. And it's like, we never really are. It's just a lot of people are scared to talk about it, or, don't want to, or don't even realize they need to.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. Yes, that is truly, that's what I'm here for. And it sounds like that's what you're there for too.
Yeah. Awesome.
It's so inspiring when you're talking to people that want to turn what they were given in life into a lesson for others. I just find that so great. We live, we learn, and we help others, hopefully, right? That's the goal, I feel like, for most people. I know Angie's story was a hard one, and she's still going through what she's going through, but her passion with helping other parents is beautiful. And I put her link for her free session and her Facebook group in the description, so make sure you check that out. And thank you so much for listening to the Mama Jack podcast. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Instagram. You can find me on TikTok. I hope you liked today's episode. Thank you.